No, I recently just
So you can still.
Shout it out. What kind of deodorant do you use? Tell me. I want to know. I'm always looking for deodorant.
Secret.
Old Spice. Which Old Spice?
I alternate.
Oh, so on different days you smell different.
Yes.
Wow. I'm gonna smell you every day now.
Please don't.
You don't control my nose.
No, you do. I switched to the aluminum-free one though.
Oh, no aluminum. It's good for
Yeah,
the
it's
environment
better.
and your pits.
Joy had an answer.
Joy had an answer.
Secret.
See, it's a secret.
No, that's the brand.
It's a brand. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. I also use Old Spice, and I alternate also between Sport and Bear Glove. Bear Glove is a little more pricey, so I alternate between Sport because that's cheap. Anyways, so I am going to fish for an answer. Let's see if you can get it. If I've talked to you at all this week, you'll know what I'm looking for, so don't say it. But what animal do you think of when you hear the word gentle? It's kind of an animal. Gentle animal, what do you think of? Shout it out.
Bear.
Bear?
A lion?
A lion? No, gentle.
What they're called.
What?
Panda.
Panda? Okay.
Also there.
What was
Anybody excluding the one in Monty Python.
Okay. Okay, what else?
What about a mountain?
A mountain lion?
No, a Malamute.
Malamute. Wow, we're getting exquisite over here. Fancy. Exotic.
That's like the red top.
Others?
Orangutan. Pig.
Orangutan? Okay, never mind. And we're done. I'm gonna say lambs. No one else thinks of a lamb when they think gentle. I don't know. I think of lambs.
They're jumpy. Anything that's
They're gummy.
Jumpy.
Jumpy. Yes, lambs are jumpy. I'm a big fan of lambs right now because I've been talking about them all week, and I spent my weekend with some lambs, as you'll see here. So that's me. That's Lammy. Her name's Lammy. Her mother abandoned her, and so she is living in the front yard of my friend's house. My friend is a shepherd. Those are his sheep. Those are his sheep. Those are the lambs that are born so far. And so that's Lammy. And Lammy is so cute. I got to their house before they were home, so I walk in and I hear, and it comes running up to me and just starts like nudging my leg. And I found out that meant she wanted milk. So also the thing about lambs that I learned, I'm all about lambs right now, is to eat, you have to scratch their butt. So it stimulates them to eat the milk. So my friends have a little bucket with a nipple on it. And when she's hungry, she'll nudge your leg so you can scratch her butt, because that's what her mom does when she's feeding. So lambs. Lambs are actually kind of rough. So you might think, oh, a gentle little lamb. Lamb can't hurt anyone. I have scratches on my arms, not from the lambs, but I was diving for lambs. Lambs are hard to catch. They're kind of intense. They're a lot stronger than they look. That's a strong lamb. And so we had to pen them up, and we were castrating them. And so one of my friends was holding the pen together. My other friend had the castrating device, and I was jumping and diving for lambs and trying to catch them. And they kept trying to squirm away. So I have some cuts on my arms. So those are lambs. And sometimes when I think of gentleness, I equate it with being a pansy. So being delicate or weak, saying, oh, he's so gentle. And not many men want to be categorized as gentle. We want to be known as tough and rough and tumble. And I think the GMO version, we're talking about fruits of the spirit, so we're talking about GMO fruit. The GMO version of gentleness is passivity or weakness, because those are easier. It's easy to pass off being passive as gentle. And I'm not going to rebuke this person because I want to be gentle. I'm not going to say the hard thing because I want to be gentle. I'm not going to stand up for this cause or action because I want to be gentle. Gentleness and bravery or courage feel so opposite. It feels like they can't exist in the same space. But gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit, and our God is not a weak or passive God. So then, what is this gentleness that paradoxically exists with bravery and courage? So let's start with some definitions. Starting in Galatians, when Paul lists the 9 fruit of the Spirit, the word he uses here for gentleness is praetes, which is translated to meekness, meaning the withholding of strength or submission. Paul also uses the word epikeia to describe the gentleness of Christ in 2 Corinthians 10:1. I, Paul, myself entreat you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ. I, who am humble when face to face with you, but bold toward you when I am away. This word epikeia suggests the yielding of a judge who, instead of demanding the exact penalty required by strict justice, gives way to mercy. So, a judge who has every right to exact judgment, instead not judging. This Christ-like behavior is also seen in 1 Timothy 3:3 when talking about the qualifications of an overseer. Not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. And then in Titus 3:1-2, remind the believers to submit to rulers and authorities, to be obedient and ready for every good work, to malign no one, and to be peaceable and gentle, showing full consideration to everyone. Then in James 3:17, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, epikes, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. That's all in the New Testament. It's also in the Old Testament. If you look at the Old Testament, the word is anam, which means to be humble. We see this in 2 Samuel 22:36. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your gentleness made me great. And in Psalm 18:35, you have given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand supported me, and your gentleness made me great. I said that twice. I copied that wrong. One of those is wrong. Oops. Copy and paste error. I guess we'll never know. Jesse will know because she's looking it up. This Hebrew word expresses the withholding of the judgment from a divine judge whose refusal to exact the full demands of the law lifts those up who would otherwise be crushed under its condemnation. You have it. You're looking at me.
I think it's the correct one is 1835, though I don't think it has, it does have the right hand.
Okay.
1835 Psalms is correct. Seems like.
Oh, okay. So the Samuel one, is the Samuel one the same?
It may
Oh, I think it's the same.
Oh.
I did copy it right. Yes, go me. It's just very similar.
Yeah,
So it felt like I was
there's
saying
slight variation.
there's a little bit of variation. Okay, great. So it's in there twice. That's the bottom line. It's in there twice. And so Jesus, going back to the New Testament, Jesus is the perfect example of what it looks like to be this kind of gentle. Not the pansy, passive sort of gentle, but this sort of gentle, the withholding judgment gentle. So we're going to look at John 7:53-8:6. Then they all went home, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him. And he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now, what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. So let's break down this situation. We have Jesus teaching in the temple courts, and a crowd of people gathered. Pretty normal day for Jesus. Then we have the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. These are kind of the spiritual, religious elite at the time. They're kind of like the pinnacles of spirituality for the community. And they're not all bad folks. I think we give them a bad rep. They actually were part of turning the nation back to God and following the law of Moses. So we don't want to be too critical of them, but they definitely miss it. They miss the mark. But at this point, some of them are pretty upset with Jesus. He's this radical new teacher who has stepped onto the scene, who seems to be totally ignoring the law of Moses that God had given the people thousands of years ago. So they try to trap Jesus in a catch-22. Let me explain that a little bit. Jesus is in front of a crowd of people, and they're trying to get Jesus to contradict himself so that he loses his credibility with the people, and they stop following him. They stop listening to him. They go back to listening to the Pharisees, the teachers of the law. What they do is bring before him this woman caught in adultery. Let's stop there. What do you have to do to catch someone in the act of adultery? Walking on them? Okay. How else? What do you think these people were doing? Spying on them.
Or they could have had their own spies.
Yeah.
And bring people to them.
Yeah, they're like waiting to find someone to catch them to bring to Jesus. That's kind of pervy if you ask me. In Deuteronomy 17:6, it says, on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses, the one who is to die shall be put to death. A person shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. So you have this group, teachers of the law, Pharisees. Like we caught this woman. And in 1915, it says, a single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or for any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses shall a charge be established. The law of Moses commanded the execution of not only the adulteress, but also of the adulterer, the man and the woman, both parties. So for one thing, it's unjust. The man isn't here. Also, because if she is truly caught in adultery, they would know who the other party is. If you caught someone, there's 2 people, take 2 to tango. If they were actually trying to abide by the law, then it wouldn't just be the woman, which is evidence towards their true intention. And despite these things, they are correct. The law does call for the stoning of this woman. So we have the law of Moses that says stone the woman. On the other hand, Rome had removed capital jurisdiction from Jewish courts, meaning they couldn't sentence people to death, except in the case of temple violations. So the teachers of the law and the Pharisees are testing whether he will reject the law that the Romans had set up. Will he reject that law, compromising his Jewish following? Oh, he submits to the Romans. He's not a true Jew. Thus allowing the leaders to create this sense of disbelief in the people. Jesus is contradicting himself. So, will he reject the Roman law, compromising his Jewish following by not stoning her, or will he choose to stone her, which rejects the Roman law, thus allowing the Jewish leaders to bring him to Roman authority? Look, there's this Jewish guy, he's causing chaos. He stoned a woman. He's not allowed to do that. You guys said he's not allowed to do that. Catch-22. Caught between a hard place and a rock. Other way around. It's diabolical. And to help us visualize this, I'm going to ask us all to stand and stay standing. And this poor woman, Think about this woman, this poor woman, a pawn in the game of these men. Actually, Rebecca, can you come up here? I'm going to use you as the woman. Stand right here, facing me. So, imagine this poor woman. Here, Rebecca. A pawn in the game of these men used as a means of example. Treated unfairly, all eyes are on her and Jesus. Us. Imagine the stares, the looks of disgust and condemnation. To make matters worse, how are people usually caught in adultery dressed? She's disheveled, probably crying. Her life hangs in the balance, and if she survives this altercation, how can she show her face around town again? The stage is set. The tension has built. This is the climax. The teachers of the law, the Pharisees, are thinking, we've got Jesus. We've trapped him. So what will Jesus do? But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left. So you can have a seat. And the woman was still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." I'm going to ask you first, Rebecca, what were you thinking in that situation, or how are you feeling?
Just a lot of people looking at me.
A lot of people looking at you. Okay. How are you feeling internally?
I would feel anxious.
Anxious? Okay. Others, what are you thinking or what stood out to you? How were you feeling? What were you thinking? You can just shout it out.
As the crowd.
Yeah, that's the crowd.
I just feel like sad, in case if somebody throws a bunch of stones at, one person, that would hurt.
Yeah, so that's a painful way to die. Others,
Lots of tension,
lots of tension. Why?
just kind of from all angles. Anytime you get a big group of people together, there's like a lot of energy, but also the severity of the situation, super tense.
Yeah, everything would go sideways really fast.
I wanted to offer to sub out with her so she didn't have to do it.
Okay, sacrifice. You got a good one here.
I think if I was the crowd, ready to condemn her, it feels really awkward to oh, we're ready to stone. Oh, just kidding, I have no right to. I'm gonna sit down. That feels really defeating and really awkward.
Yeah. Anyone else feel similar to that? Yeah. In Deuteronomy 19:18-19, Scripture says, "The judges must make a thorough investigation. And if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against a fellow Israelite, then do to the false witness as that witness intended to do to the other party." Which means, if the teachers of the law and the Pharisees were lying, they would be stoned. And how Jesus interacts with this crowd, how he diffuses this tense, awkward, anxious situation. This woman standing there, the crowd, stones probably ready to go. What he does, he kneels down and starts writing in the ground. And the mystery is, what does Jesus write? What does Jesus write with his finger in the sand? Some people think it's this parallel between God writing the 10 Commandments in the stone with his finger, and Jesus writing in the ground. Maybe he lists the 10 Commandments. We don't know. So the route I probably would have gone, the logical route, is proven. I would have taken the Deuteronomy passage. Okay, teachers of the law, Pharisees, if you know the law, prove it. Prove that she did this. But instead, Jesus gets to the root of the tension. And the big question here that the people are asking is, how will Jesus deal with sin? That is really what is at stake. How will Jesus deal with sin? The law of Moses says to deal with it severely and strictly. So what will Jesus do? He is not passive. He is not weak. He is not a pansy. There's so much on the line in this moment. Will Jesus contradict himself? Will he pronounce judgment? Will he adhere to Roman law or Mosaic law? Jesus, again, I'm going to repeat that. Jesus perfectly diffuses the situation. Removing the attention from the woman, all eyes are on her. They're focused on her and her sin. He removes the attention from the woman and has everyone point the finger back at themselves. He makes them look inwardly. The outrage, disgust, condemnation, no longer on this woman, but turned onto their own sin. And they slowly start to realize that. Oldest to youngest. That's where they start leaving. They have no right to stone this woman. And Jesus makes them aware of that. God's heart does not change, and he does not contradict himself. Therefore, we have to reconcile the fact that the Mosaic law calls for the stoning of this woman. And Jesus, who is God, calls her to not be stoned. There's a paradox there. How God says to stone her, Jesus, God, says no. And the good biblical scholar, one, when face to face with these paradoxes, will ask, what was the context of the law? And two, what is the heart of the law? God's heart is to be with the people, to be reunified with creation. That's the narrative of Scripture since the fall. God trying to be back in community with his people, and sin is what separates people from God. Because in God's presence, anyone with sin would die. That's why priests had to atone for their sin before they entered God's presence. Because God is so holy. And sin, it cannot survive in his presence. So this law that God commanded his people, within this context, made it so that he could be with them. To bring the people into closer relationship with him by dealing with sin severely. Jesus, through his sacrifice, became the payment for our sin. So instead of you paying the price for your sin, instead of you being stoned, it is now on Jesus when you confess and repent. We call that atonement. This picture shows how evil sin is, how infectious it is to be dealt with such severity. It's kind of like when I had bed bugs a couple years ago. We had to throw away mattresses and sofas and furniture and fumigate and sleep outside for a month. We dealt with it severely so that it wouldn't spread. But this also proves how much greater God is to overcome. It proves his gentleness, because he has every right to bring about condemnation, but instead withholds it. He even goes a step further to take the penalty on himself. The obvious person in this story who experienced Jesus' gentleness is the woman. If you notice, he was the only one left. He is the only one without sin. So by his own right, he had all authorities to stone this woman, and he doesn't. But who else openly admitted to sin? The crowd. The teachers of the law, the Pharisees. They all experience Jesus' gentleness in the moment because he doesn't bring judgment on them, although they have all sinned. So are you the woman? You made some big mistakes, faced judgment and ridicule from people. Jesus wants you to know that he does not condemn you, but also to go and sin no more. Are you the crowd? Maybe your focus is on other sin. I haven't messed up as bad as this person. Jesus' invitation for you is to look inward. Let the person without sin cast the first stone. Maybe you're one of the teachers of the law or the Pharisees. Your understanding of who God is limited. You've been keeping his commands, but there isn't room for gentleness. Or maybe Jesus is on trial. You're testing Jesus to see that he will eventually contradict himself. There's no way he can be this good. We see here that Jesus is up for the challenge. He doesn't immediately disqualify the Pharisees and the teachers of the law when they come to him, but he engages them. And that's what Jesus wants to do with you. So come to him. I'm going to give us 1 minute to think, and then invite you to share in partners. Questions are up here on the slide. Where are you in this story?